Well, things are getting interesting. First thing I got up and there was Environmental Coffee House with a live show going. I was listening to her and I was going to make a comment and then all of a sudden the audio went out. I couldn't hear a word she was saying. And I said, well, now everyone else is still commenting, so it must be working. It must be on my end. But I couldn't figure out why her audio wasn't working. And then she started to just cut out altogether. And so I said, well, east to west coast, maybe it's a little more difficult than we think. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're going to be talking about the environment, especially the oceans, and what the Orange Man here in the U.S. did just yesterday that pretty much nukes the oceans. Let's go to the board and see what he did this time. So, the Orange Man here in the U.S. did an executive order to pump disease into the oceans. An executive order out of the U.S. orders to continue to pump or pumping in disease into our oceans. Trump's green lighting of corporate takeover of the oceans. This will accelerate the exploitation of the oceans. This will relax regulations in the oceans for pollution. This will streamline the construction of industrial offshore aqua facilities. This will pump pollution and disease into the oceans. So what he's talking about is these offshore fish farms that are just big wire cages, and they raise fish in here. Now the only problem is they feed fish with other fish. So you go out in the oceans and you fish for fish, and you take those fish and kill them. Then you bring them to facilities that pumps them full of antibodies and other chemicals to make them grow faster and to keep them from getting sick. And these little pellets of dead fish are then fed to the live fish in the ocean. These pellets break down and leach out into the ocean of everything that's in those. Plus, all these fish eating all this chemicals will then leach out into the ocean as well. This is as horrific for the oceans as it can be. You can't get any worse, any more polluting, any more horrible for the fish that are living around that area. And don't forget that these ocean currents will carry all this pollution all around the ocean. And we will denude the ocean of wild fish to make feed for domesticated eating fish here around the U.S. and other parts of the world where this is taking place, like Japan. It just keeps getting worse. So for those that say that the man at the top isn't responsible, I disagree with you. That order came from the top. That makes it his responsibility for now putting a super polluting farming facilities into the oceans and polluting them. And this will also make it pretty tough for pleasure boaters to get out into the ocean to do anything. First of all, it'll stink like hell, full of sewage, and you're not going to be able to get around the ponds. But no, that's not all. So I've noticed something over the years, that there's a difference between peer-reviewed studies on climate change versus non-peer-reviewed studies on climate change. You'll notice that the peer-reviewed studies, the timeline is much longer than the non-peer-reviewed studies, such as the McPherson's, who says things are over already and there's nothing we can do. But the more we look at peer-reviewed studies, we notice we have lots of time to do something, and that we should be doing it right now. Let's go over and find out the newest study on sea level rise. Sea levels could rise by 1 meter by 2100. Sea levels could rise by 5 meters by 2300. It depends on where we limit our pollution at. If warming is limited to 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, sea level rise will be 0.5 meters. The study is based on the opinion of 106 sea level rise experts. Let's go over and find out whether the CO2 levels are being leveled off and kept at a limit to 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. Well, as we can see here on this chart, we're nowhere even near there. We're way past that. And that I think this study is a bit optimistic, but that's just an opinion of mine. Now, the problem with these studies is that, of course, if they're government studies, whoever's in charge at the top of the government always tells them to make it look less severe than it really is, so that it makes it look like his reign in power did something about global climate change when really they didn't. But people are kind of falling asleep at this switch, not paying much attention to the environment, while we have the terrible COVID pandemic sweeping the land. And more people are calling it a fake pandemic or excessive or not. We're dismissing the experts more and more as we go down the road, and we're taking more and more creed to the ones that don't use science at all. I really think something is wrong with the population. I still think it's pollution in the ocean and the water caused by plastic. That's just another one of my opinions. So, with that, I appreciate all the ups, downs, new subscribers, and definitely the comments. I do read each one, but I just don't want to comment on it because it screws up all my comments, and I never get to see anybody's new comments. But I do see them all, and I do appreciate all the compliments and all the comments left on the videos. And until next time.